right, Sabrina, we are getting ready to hear from Dr. Colt Knight. Dr. Knight is from the University of Maine, and he is going to be talking about keeping our boots. You know what I'm thinking about. Keeping our pigs healthy, one boot cover at a time. Dr. Knight, let me just give you a little heads up. You may have missed it in our last session, but one of the things that caught my attention that Clay Parrish was speaking about was that pets are a big spreader of diseases. So you take your dog to the pig show and then you bring him back to the barn. Your dog is not stepping in a pan of Synergize or whatever disinfectant you're using. And so Sabrina said maybe we could develop some boot covers for pets. So that is definitely where my mind is at. I'm thoroughly entertained by that idea. So I thought you might hear her pitch that idea to you. All right, let me introduce Dr. Knight. Colt grew up in a coal mining family in West Virginia where they operated a small family farm and a show horse stable. During academic breaks and in between schools, he worked strip mines across the country. Colt earned his Bachelor of Science in Animal Science at the University of Kentucky, his Master's of Science in Animal Science at Angelo State University, and his PhD in Animal Science at the University of Arizona in 2006, 2012, and 2016, respectively. In the fall of 2016, he worked on a postdoc with Dr. Derek Bailey at New Mexico State University. And since 2017, Colt has worked as an assistant professor of extension for the University of Maine, where he serves as the state livestock specialist. So, Colt, I'm going to bring you on screen with us right now. And we have a question for you. Sabrina, do you know what that question is? Same one we asked Clay. What? You with me?
Oh, what is the food that you would eat for the rest of your life if you could?
Only one food.
Well, being as this is the swine conference, barbecue.
Barbecue. Nice. Very, very nice. So I had thought maybe Clay Parrish's answer would be chicken wings, but instead he said, no, no, no. Since this is a swine conference, bacon. Bacon. So I appreciate that. I am going to support the potato farmers and still stick with my French fries. So sorry.
Yeah, I
No,
think we missed the opportunity to say a pork product, but
we
I think
did.
we all agree that we would eat those. But
Yeah. Yep. All right, Dr. Knight, we are going to turn the stage over to you and you are going to share with us just a little bit more about keeping our pigs healthy.
Absolutely.
Get the right.
Well, welcome everyone to the NextGen Swine Conference, and thank you, Jen, for doing an outstanding job introducing me. And uh, so I was invited to talk about biosecurity, and I know Clay discussed a little bit about biosecurity in his talk, and we're going to continue that a little bit. Biosecurity is a tough subject to talk about because there's a couple ways to present biosecurity to producers. One, you try to scare the hell out of them and show a bunch of nasty pictures and talk about all doom and gloom, and people tend to just check out when we take that approach. Uh, then there's kind of the recipe approach to biosecurity where you just start at one and walk through a list of all the biosecurity steps you can take, and that gets boring. And then the way I like to do it is just expose people to the basics of biosecurity. What are the risks, and how can we mitigate those risks? And so that's how I like to focus my topic. And since Jen introduced me, I don't have to. I did want to point out that I've been a livestock specialist here in Maine for almost 10 years now. And I work all across the country with livestock producers. And I am a livestock producer myself. I own a 15-acre registered Berkshire farm here in central Maine. And we raise breeding stock and feeder pigs. When we think about all the risks that are associated with the swine industry, it's really a global set of risk because people are moving back and forth between countries. We're sending products between countries. And if you look at this, this is an old Alltech graphic that kind of shows how pathogens are moved from areas to areas. And what we're going to talk about today mostly is strict on-farm biosecurity. But, we've got disposal of food waste from aircrafts, sterilization of garbage. I mean, all of these things really fit in to biosecurity. And when we talk about biosecurity, what we're trying to protect is our herd health and maintain our production. So improved herd health is equal to increased production. And how is health accomplished in your herd? And we've talked about this before, but biosecurity is paramount. The animal's food, water, minerals, paramount. Monitoring for those illnesses, maintaining vaccinations and record keeping. And then finally, having a veterinary client-patient relationship. And depending on where you are in the country, having a veterinary relationship can be quite difficult. There is just a national shortage of large animal vets. Some areas there is a shortage of vets, period. And then in some areas, swine-specific veterinarians just do not exist. And being able to have someone to reach out to is critical. And I always like to suggest to folks, when you first get animals or before you get animals even, is reach out and try to secure a veterinarian. That way you are talking to them on a non-emergency basis. Invite them to your farm. It's going to cost you a farm visit, but that's what it takes. And then when you do have an emergency situation come up, you have an existing relationship with a veterinarian, and it'll be much easier to get that veterinary care. When it comes to diseases are spread through what we call pathogens, and there's lots of different types of pathogens. We've got living pathogens. Most of us are familiar with the different parasites and protozoas and fungi and bacterias and things. And then there's acellular or non-living pathogens like viruses and prions. But how are those spread? And there's two main pathways. There's direct contact and then there's indirect contact. So direct contact would be coming into direct contact with blood or bodily fluids. And these can spread from person to person, animal to animal, human to animal. And as Clay was talking about in that last talk, don't forget about your pets. Don't forget about wild animals. Anything that can come into direct contact from one location to the next can spread pathogens. And then indirect contact, coming into contact with contaminated surface areas of different objects. And this is really, really critical. This lady in this picture is using a bucket. And, so if we use this bucket from the show ring, we bring it back home without cleaning it, we're transferring pathogens that way. Sharing show brushes, manure forks, tractor tires, all really common indirect contact that we get. The bottom of our boots, and we're really going to hammer home those boots here in a little bit. Airborne pathogens. This is inhaling the pathogens contained in droplets of moistures, aerosols, the fine particles. And this is a quick video of a pig at a show coughing. So every time that pig coughs, he spitting or exhaling pathogens into the air. And then when the wind blows, or just the velocity of him coughing, it's spreading those pathogens across the entire area. So we got to watch out for those. Vector-borne. These are pathogens transmitted through insect bites. And there's a lot of different ones. Some of the key ones that we have with pigs, especially if we're raising pigs outdoors, would be ticks, mosquitoes. There's lots of flies. There's lots of different biting insects that can transmit disease from one animal to the next. And I've had issues with ticks lately here in Maine. And nationally, we've got issues with ticks. One of the new and up and coming ticks that we're all really afraid of is the Lone Star tick, which can transmit alpha-gal syndrome, which means that you become allergic to red meat. You become violently ill if you eat red meat. So we want to really avoid these types of spreads. And bloodborne, I think most of us are familiar with how pathogens can spread through direct or indirect contact with blood. And food and waterborne, ingesting food and or water contaminated with pathogens, very common, especially when those food or water sources can share vectors with other critters, bugs, mice, rats, birds, etc., etc. Fecal oral, direct or indirect contact with contaminated surfaces, walking around in a muddy pen, running your hand across a guardrail that has been in contact with some of that matter. And then you go and you wipe your mouth with it. Pigs do the same thing, they can go and touch things like that as well. And then lastly, we're going to talk about fomites. That's an object such as a dish, doorknob, article of clothing that may contaminate with infectious agents and serve in their transmission. And I've got pictures of some things that we might see in a show ring setting or just on your farm in general. Brushes, very common to keep those in one's back pocket. And say you're getting ready to go into the show ring and someone says, "Hey, I forgot my brush." And then someone from across the way says, "Hey, I got mine," pulls it out of their pocket and throws it at you so you can stuff it in your pocket right before you go in. Very common. Manure forks, not just at the show, but at home too. So if we have animals that are sick in one barn, we're going to keep those separate from our healthy animals. If we go and we use the same manure fork to clean both barns, we're spreading that pathogen around. Same thing with feed buckets, boots, everything that can go from one to the next. We want to keep those separated out. And that brings us to our talk today, and that's biosecurity. There's a lot of different definitions of biosecurity, from things that could take us a year to spell out. The easy definition of farm biosecurity: a series of management practices designed to minimize or prevent the importation of infectious agents onto the farm. Another really easy way to think about biosecurity is no germs in, no germs out. So, previous speaker mentioned boots and booties, and we talked about putting booties on dogs and cats and farm pets and the whole 9 yards. Why are boots so critical? And we'll talk about this. So one of the major pathogen transfer that we see on farm is actually through our boots, because the pathogens are on the ground. They're in the mud, they're in the feces, and we walk over those. Now, when we walk over them, they get stuck to the bottom of our shoes, and then we are unwillingly transmitting them everywhere we walk. So if we're at one location and we walk through and we pick up a pathogen in our boot and then we get in our truck, now the pathogen is in our truck. When we get out of our truck and go feed our pigs at home, we're now walking that pathogen onto our farm. And so keeping those feet clean is really crucial. And there's a couple ways to do that. One, we can keep separate boots for each location. That's not uncommon. We can clean our boots from location to location. And then we could use some disposable boots. And I've got pictures of those here in a second. But when it comes to actually cleaning our boots or cleaning surfaces, there's a couple critical things that we need to talk about. One, we want to remove all the organic matter and visible dirt. Just simply removing visible organic matter, removing dirt, is going to take away 95% of all the pathogens that are contained within there. So already, just by simply washing off the dirt, we can get rid of 90% of the pathogens. The other reason we do that is organic matter will actually decrease the effectiveness of our disinfectants. So one, we want to wash off the heavy organic matter. Two, we want to clean that organic, or then we want to clean the surface after we have rinsed off the organic matter. There's a couple different ways that we can clean. We can use soap and water, which is only effective if we scrub it for an extended a period of time, which is usually longer and more work than what we're willing to do. So we really like to use disinfectants instead of just soap and water. But let's take a look at this slide that I have here. This is two separate sets of boots. One is just a regular set of rubber boots, and one is a smooth soled rubber boot that's been walked through a barn. And then so number one, that is no cleaning. Number two, that's just like washing it off with a water hose. And then number three, that is washing it off with a water hose and then using a disinfectant. And then we would take a swab, like cotton swab, and we swab the bottom of all those sets of boots, and then we put them in a petri dish and we let all the bacteria grow, or the pathogens grow. And then you can see all the little colonies of pathogens grow in here. And so my little mouse pointer doesn't do much on this setup, so we won't worry about that. But you can see clearly how much bacteria is growing on those boots if we don't wash them off. So we're spreading a lot of bacteria around. Two, if we just rinse it off with water, we get a lot less bacteria, but it's still there. And then three, when we look in the ones that were cleaned and disinfected properly, we see there's a real lack of any kind of bacterial or pathogenic growth on that petri dish. And the two slides are also showing about surface area. So whenever something is rougher, it has more surface area. And when you have more surface area, there's more locations for those pathogens to cling to. And so when we have more surface area, we have the potential for more pathogens to cling onto there. Of course, if cleaning your boots is just too much effort or impractical, I'll give you an example. This morning, I got up to feed my pigs. Here in Maine, we had a series of cold, snow, ice, rain, falling out. My entire farm turned into a skating rink last night. Pure ice, about 1.5 inches thick. And then we got a light dusting of snow this morning. I can't just keep boot wash out in single digit temperatures. It'll freeze. And so that becomes an issue. But we can use things like these disposable booties. These are one-time use only. We put them on right after we get out of the truck. We walk around the area. and then we take them off, we turn them inside out so that the pathogens are on the inside of the booties when we throw them away. And that's a really good way to prevent pathogen transfer from one location to the next. Now, I talked about this earlier. What do we use when we clean our boots or clean our equipment, our tractor tires, our pins, our feed buckets, our feeders, so on and so forth? Well, there's lots of different types of disinfectants. And the most commonly used one, of course, would be bleach. And that kills almost everything. The good thing about bleach is it's really cheap. The bad part about bleach is it can be corrosive and toxic. So another level of disinfectant might be an iodine compound. These are pretty decent. They kill most things. They're cheap, but they stain. They're corrosive. They can be toxic. When we start looking at different detergents, your dish detergents, your laundry detergents, and everything, these are really pleasant for us to utilize. They make bubbles. They make us feel like everything is nice and clean. They smell good. The problem is they just don't do a great job of killing pathogens. Now, there are certain soaps that if we were to scrub hard and long enough, they would. But like I said, nobody wants to put that much effort into cleaning things. So we generally don't like to use different types of soaps for this process. Now, there are dedicated disinfectants for on-farm use, like Virkon S, Tektrol, a lot of different specific ones that work great. And they generally come in really highly concentrated solutions. They're either powder or liquid. And when it comes to mixing solutions, the liquid ones are easier. You tend to use less of them because the powder ones tend to clump up, and then we tend to over put powder into the waters and such and such. But the powders are generally cheaper than the liquid forms. But in general, dedicated disinfectants are going to be way more expensive than our like bleaches and iodines. When we think about all the different risk that we have on farms, we've got air, materials that we utilize, animals, wild animals, their food, the soil, the litter, dogs and cats running around, mice, birds, everything, people, water, dead animals, waste, everything. One of the things that a lot of people don't think about are vehicles coming in and out of our farm, like delivery vehicles. And so one of the ones that we really want to worry about are vehicles carrying animals. That's, of course, a problem because their tires are bringing in stuff. But what about our feed delivery vehicles or our Amazon delivery guy? Is he going from your neighbor's farm to your farm? And if that is true, we want to make sure that we have different delivery or intake and outtake areas for those vehicles to prevent that kind of thing. If we've got visitors coming to and from our farms, you may have seen a bunch of random biosecurity signs posted, and that was because we don't want those to be spreading diseases around everywhere. And we want to let people know coming onto our farm, hey, this is a biosecurity area. We want you to take care and not utilize it. So I mentioned these a little bit in the past, but this seems to be a ignored problem. We can do all the good work keeping our boots separate from barn to barn, keeping our feed separate from barn to barn, and everything. But if we've got these rodent critters running from barn to barn, just like our boots pick up pathogens, their little feet and hair pick up pathogens. They may grab feed from contaminated animals stored in their cheeks and then go from one barn to the next and store it in that next barn. So rats and mice are a serious biosecurity concern just from a pathogen transfer, indirect, but also direct because they can carry diseases as well. But birds, we've got birds, they fly down, especially if we've got outdoor pigs. The feed and water troughs are promoting birds. The animal's feces has got seeds, corn stuff in it, and the birds like to come down and pick that out. And birds can really transfer things from one area to the next, and not just in the animal pens, but if we store our feed outside, you can see like these pigeons are getting into the corn bin, and so everything that those pigeons have touched, they're now touching the corn, and that corn goes to feed our animals. So we got to watch out for those. But what about some other type of birds? A lot of folks don't think about, we live in a country, we have outdoor pig operation. I've got wild turkeys roaming through the yard. It's really difficult to stop and control these. But guess what? These can harbor diseases like swine brucellosis and really transfer those around our farms. What about our migratory birds? Really difficult to control these, right? Well, they carry things like avian influenza. And so we've got to be really careful about pathogen transfer with our bird friends. Now, on the animal management and safety side, this is kind of the heart of our biosecurity practices. There's lots of different things that we can do. Quarantine new animals, quarantine animals returning from a fair. So if we take an animal out of our general population and we go to an animal show, and when we come back, don't put them straight back into the pen. Put them into your dedicated quarantine area. Generally speaking, we want to quarantine animals for at least 30 days because generally speaking, most pathogens will manifest within 30 days. Not all, there are some other diseases that might take 6 to 8 weeks, but just for a general concern, at minimum, 30 days is what we want. We want to use separate equipment for healthy and sick animals. That seems pretty self-explanatory, but you want to think about your order of operations. So when you leave the house in the morning, you want to go to your healthy animals first, do your thing, and visit your sick animals last. That way that we're not moving pathogens from our sick animals to our healthy animals. Don't borrow tools and equipment from other farms. I see this quite a bit. Someone might need a post hole auger equipped tractor or a skid steer, and we don't think about all the pathogens that are on that from their farm to our farm. And just because animals appear healthy on your farm or your neighbor's farm doesn't mean that they're not just harboring bacteria or harboring different pathogens. So you can take healthy animals that are harboring pathogens and bring that to your farm just by borrowing equipment. So we want to, if we do have to borrow equipment, we want to make sure, just like our boots, we're washing that really thoroughly. If we've got trucks and trailers that we're taking from our farm to the neighbor's farm or to the thing, we want to stop along the way and wash those really good. Really get into those tires and things that'll be spreading those pathogens. Keeping separate boots or using dedicated clothing and footwear is really important. Perimeter fences, really key. I've got, just a million things we can discuss here,
but unfortunately, that million things and our timing are not lining up. Oh, here's your last slide. Let me put that up so that people can connect with you.
Yep, and I wanted to say that special thanks to the Scientist team and especially Dr. Jacqueline Nolting for letting me rip off her slides for this talk. I actually had a different PowerPoint prepared, but that ice storm really put a hurting on things. I fell this morning and busted my elbow, and then the truck got stuck, and I spent all morning trying to get out of the ice. and I forgot my laptop at the house, so I had to make this presentation right before I gave it.
Well, Colt, I just want to thank you so much for sharing today. It is 12:30, and so we are going to have to transition to our next round of breakout sessions. And so I would encourage our attendees to click on sessions and then select a session that you would like to attend. So thank you so much for sharing today. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.